So imagine this. One day, you're in your house, then a salesman comes and knocks on your door. Being the nice person you are, you open the door and the salesman says, "Hi," and explains what he's selling. He has an accent, but you can't really tell where it is from. Then, the salesman's friends show up and they barge in your house without you wanting it. They started to live in your house and control your way of living. Before you know it, they gave you and your wife and kids special IDs and only let you use one toilet while they use the rest. You can only sleep in one room of the house and they constantly oppress you. Sound familiar? Well, it should be, because this event was known as apartheid.
The idea of apartheid initially began in 1910. South African British colonies wanted a new way of governing and tried their hardest to keep South Africans out of it. With this new way of thinking, the ideology of apartheid submerged.
Apartheid became an official policy in 1948 when the people were divided into four racial groups. At the top were the whites, middle were the Asians and coloreds, and the lower were the blacks.
Wait, so what makes apartheid different than segregation?
Well, the difference is the systematic way in which the National Party came into power in 1948 through a formalized law.
Some of the main laws were Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act. This prohibited marriages between white people and people of other races. Group Areas Act. This forced physical separation between races by creating different residential areas for different races. It led to removals of people living in wrong areas. The Separate Representation of Voters Act. Together with the 1956 amendment, this act led to the removal of colored from the common voters roll. They made blacks go to different schools with a lower quality of education.
After these unjust laws were passed, the people began to get mad and protest.
Nelson Mandela was a lawyer who was addicted to his work and for that reason had several issues with his marriage. As he started wanting to make a change and bring equality to his community, Mandela led the ANC African National Congress through speeches and acts that made him an example of power that represented the South African community that was being treated this way. At the beginning of Mandela's fight for equality and their rights, they had a violent ideology because they felt this was the only way. Him and his friends like Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu would go to organizations such as the Dube municipal offices, break in and blow it up to protest against the laws being put on them. This led Mandela and his friends being looked for, and once they were found, they were put in prison for 20 years, and even then, he didn't give up the fight. White supremacy and violence were clear throughout the fight for equality, like a massacre that occurred in a town called Sharpeville on March 21st, 1960. African police decided to shoot into a crowd of about 5,000 anti-violent protesters, which, excluding the dead, wounded about 200 people. The massacre created a big crisis for the apartheid government. This led to the banning of the PAC and then the ANC, two big organizations. Although Mandela had the power with the people and his actions, this event clearly demonstrates white supremacy and their use of their power. The National Party had the power to create all the laws that segregated blacks from whites and lessened their living conditions. It was because of these laws that the South Africans began to protest and want a change in the first place. Mandela says this quote when he is in court, and they are deciding whether to kill him or put him in jail. At the beginning, Nelson was violent, leading him to jail. During jail, he realizes violence isn't the answer. And even while he was in jail, he still manages, with the support of his team, to lead them with the new ideology of peace. Not only his people support him, but now other countries do too. A campaign arises for Mandela to be president and let out of jail. In 1994, all-race elections are held. Nelson Mandela wins the election and becomes the first black president in South Africa. Apartheid begins to fade and their fight for equality begins to make a change. As you can see, there were two big main power sources throughout the history of apartheid. And with this, we can see how the power bounces back and forth and can eventually permanently switch from one side to the other, like it did when Nelson Mandela became president.
Free Nelson Mandela.